In the early 16th century, the balance of power in Central Europe stood on fragile ground. Hungary, once a formidable kingdom, guarding the gateway between East and West, was weakened by internal struggles and leadership uncertainty. At the same time, the Ottoman Empire, disciplined, unified, and expansionist, pressed steadily northward. As danger mounted, Western Europe watched largely from a distance, offering prayers and promises rather than armies. The result was a historic imbalance that would reshape the fate of the region. Hungary's vulnerability did not emerge overnight. Years of political fragmentation had eroded the kingdom's strength. Powerful nobles competed for influence, regional lords acted independently, and royal authority weakened with each passing decade. At the center of this instability stood a boy king, Louis II, who ascended the throne while still a minor. Too young to command armies or enforce unity, he ruled in name while factions ruled in practice. Decisions were delayed, reforms stalled, and the kingdom drifted without firm direction at a moment when decisiveness was critical. The Ottoman Empire, by contrast, was entering a period of confident expansion. Under Sultan Suleiman, the state combined military innovation with centralized authority. Its armies were well organized, its commanders experienced, and its logistical systems refined through decades of campaigning. The Ottomans did not rely on chance or improvisation. Each campaign was carefully planned, each objective selected with strategic clarity. Hungary was not merely a target of conquest, it was a gateway to the heart of Europe. As Ottoman forces advanced toward Hungarian borders, warnings echoed across the continent. Envoys spoke of growing armies, of cannons capable of shattering medieval walls, of disciplined infantry unlike anything seen before. Yet Europe remained divided. The Holy Roman Empire was consumed by internal rivalries. France and the Habsburgs were locked in competition for dominance. Italy was a battlefield of competing powers. Religious tensions, soon to erupt into full reform movements, distracted rulers from external threats. Instead of a united response, Hungary received sympathy. Letters were exchanged, sermons delivered, and calls for unity voiced from pulpits. But troops did not march. Resources did not flow. The idea of a coordinated defense dissolved under the weight of competing interests. For many Western rulers, the Ottoman threat seemed distant, a problem for the frontier states rather than a shared responsibility. Within Hungary, preparations were uneven. Fortresses along the southern frontier were underfunded and understaffed. Some commanders showed determination and courage, but others lacked supplies or authority. Noble levies were unreliable, assembling slowly and often refusing extended service. Attempts to reform the army met resistance from elites unwilling to surrender privileges or bear new taxes. The kingdom's defenses depended more on tradition than adaptation, while the Ottomans embraced modern siege warfare. As pressure mounted, the contrast between unity and division became stark. Ottoman command operated with clear hierarchy and purpose. Orders were executed swiftly, and strategy flowed from a single center of authority. Hungary, meanwhile, debated while the enemy advanced. Councils argued over responsibility. Nobles prioritized regional interests. Time slipped away. Western Europe's absence was not merely military but symbolic. The idea of Christendom standing together against external threat had once been powerful. Now it rang hollow. Appeals for a crusade failed to materialize into action. Financial aid was limited. Political support was conditional. Hungary was left to face a growing storm with shrinking resources. When confrontation finally came, it exposed the consequences of neglect. Hungarian forces, though brave, were outmatched by organization and preparation. Leadership gaps proved costly. Communication failures disrupted coordination. The young king, burdened with responsibilities far beyond his years, stood at the center of a collapsing system. His courage could not compensate for structural weakness. The Ottoman victory that followed was not solely the result of battlefield superiority. It was the culmination of years of imbalance. A unified empire faced a fragmented kingdom. Strategic patience confronted political hesitation. Modern warfare overwhelmed outdated defenses. Europe's divisions had created an opening, and the Ottomans stepped through it with precision. The aftermath sent shockwaves across the continent. Hungary's defeat shattered the illusion that distance guaranteed safety. The Ottoman presence in Central Europe was no longer theoretical. Borders shifted, alliances recalculated, and fear spread into lands that had once remained detached. Only then did Western powers begin to grasp the scale of the threat they had underestimated. Yet by the time awareness grew, opportunities had been lost. Hungary's fall was not just the loss of a kingdom, it was the collapse of a buffer that had shielded much of Europe. The price of division became clear. What prayers could not prevent, armies might have delayed or deterred. But unity arrived too late. History records this moment as a lesson in political fragmentation. Hungary's internal struggles weakened its defenses, but Europe's inaction sealed its fate. The Ottoman Empire advanced not only because of its strength, but because of the vacuum created by hesitation and rivalry among its opponents. In retrospect, the warning signs were visible. Leadership mattered, unity mattered, preparation mattered. Hungary's tragedy was not inevitable, but it became unavoidable once cooperation failed. The young king stood as a symbol of a kingdom asked to bear more than it could carry, while potential allies looked elsewhere. The story of Europe divided and Hungary abandoned remains a reminder that great powers do not fall only to force, but to neglect. When threats are shared but responsibility is denied, the cost is paid by those left standing alone at the frontier.